Hey guys, welcome. Hope it helps. My guest on the show today is Mr. Mena Botros. Mena, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. Super excited.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. So, Mena, I think me and you actually went to school back in the day. In fact, I think you're in the grade below me, and now I know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you're running your own company called. And is it Buy Summit or B Summit? How do you say it?
Yeah, BII Summit. It's the
Yeah,
Blockchain Innovation and Investment Summit.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. And I thought the timing of this could have been better given everything that's going on right now with like fintech and crypto. So this conversation timing is perfect. But before we get into everything, Mina, why don't you give all of us just a little bit of background about yourself and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sounds great. So again, my name is Mena Botros. Some people know me as Mena Morgan. And I graduated from school in New York. I went to business school. Then I worked for PwC. I did the whole Big Four thing. And then Bitcoin was going up. It was like 3,000 back in 2017. It was starting to go up. And I saw it as an opportunity to do something. I never really wanted to be an entrepreneur, by the way. And I think that's important. Like,
Okay.
I believe that you should flow. You should try to grow instead of just like, hey man, I want to be my own boss. You know what I mean? So I
Sure.
was just trying to flow, and I saw Bitcoin as an opportunity. And then I started my own business running blockchain events. It was the easiest way to get into the space without having to put any capital. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I was thinking like, oh my God, I have to do an exchange, or I have to do my own ICO. I got to do something. But the event was the easiest way to get in there without any capital. So yeah,
Okay.
then I started my business, and the idea of the business is to bring blockchain companies to Dubai from all over the world to help them meet investors and raise funds for their blockchain projects. And they're doing all kinds of stuff. Some were doing ICOs, some were just using blockchain technology, some were Bitcoin exchanges. So I got to see a whole different bunch of stuff in the space.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you made, it's funny how you're like that was the best way to get into it because there was no, I guess that was the least costly way to get into that
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
world.
it's like zero capital. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. You just bring people together. So I get where the idea came from. But when like I think like many people, when
yeah, sure.
blockchain first came out, and I think even till now in general, people know what cryptocurrency is, but people don't understand what blockchain is, which is what this is all built off. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
why don't you give us just a description so that anyone can understand of what is blockchain and why is it so important right now?
Sure, sure. So again, I'm not a blockchain expert, but because I
Sure.
have to deal with so many different blockchain companies that come to me, I get to see so many different explanations, and I have like my own kind of explanation that is as close to the science as possible, right?
Sure.
So, but blockchain is basically it's literally transactions or data transactions that go through codes, and those codes go through different blocks. And these blocks can have like millions of different codes that need to be decoded for them to get to the next block. And the idea is that when data or transactions or money or whatever that goes to the blocks, it goes to the blocks so that people don't have to mess with it, right? Like the computer does everything, right? And that's why it's a bit more secure because there's no human interaction. So blockchain isn't like blockchain technology and cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and stuff. It's totally different, right? Because blockchain is the technology, Bitcoin is the result of the technology. But at the
Okay.
same time, like blockchain was created because Bitcoin was created. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Like
get
the
you.
only way for Bitcoin to exist is to use
Is
blockchain technology,
yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
so you got into Bitcoin in 20, I think you said 2017, that's when you started the company.
Yeah.
And at the time, like you said, you said 3,200. So I remember back in, I think it was in 2019 when I was living in Amsterdam, that year was like the Bitcoin like hype and like Ethereum and all these other platforms and the prices were going crazy. So people were buying. I have some friends who invested, they made some money and everyone's kind of like was in that phase like should I sell now, will it go up more, I don't know what. I think that's a typical thing. And then
Yeah.
last year, from my perspective at least, or from the people around me and stuff, it kind of died down, that
Yeah.
noise
Yeah.
around like crypto and stuff, because I think the value went down significantly. And now all of a
Yeah.
sudden here we are, beginning of the year again, and it's back and everyone's talking about buy crypto, invest in crypto. So since you're like in that space, why did it, I'm curious from your perspective, why was it so high in 2019? Last year it dropped and now it's all of a sudden picking up again. I don't understand. So maybe
Right.
you could explain.
So absolutely. So the again, like the discussion about Bitcoin is, can it replace like the US dollar? Can it be currency? And there's so many arguments for that because, the US dollar devalues every time the Federal Reserve prints money, right? Like it inflates, it costs more dollars to buy the same thing.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin doesn't inflate because there's a finite amount and it's not really tied to like interest rates and stuff. So that's the argument. But at the same time, governments need to kind of have a say in what happens, and Bitcoin doesn't allow that because it's decentralized. So what I'm trying to say is, the more people believe in the Bitcoin way versus the fiat way, the more the value of Bitcoin is going to go up, right? It's like an intrinsic means of value. So the more people believe in it, the more it's going to go up. So 2017, there was all this hype, ICOs were going on. So people were like, oh my God, this is the next big thing. So everybody's buying Bitcoin, it goes up. But then ICOs are like, tokens were not really doing anything. I couldn't go to the grocery store and buy stuff with tokens. So people are like, yep, we've made as much money as we can. Let's get out. So then it crashes, right? And then it started to have more use cases. Coronavirus hits. People start to lose faith in the government and stuff. They're like, you know what? Let me just put some stuff in Bitcoin, right? The vaccine is going to make me a zombie. I don't trust the government. Let me move to Bitcoin. Then it goes back up. And then when it reached like, a few months ago, when it started to really pick up, what used to happen was just normal FOMO, fear of missing out, people being like, oh man, I gotta have Bitcoin. But then that doesn't really change the price of Bitcoin so much, because normal people, the average person is going to put in like $1,000, $2,000. But then institutional FOMO started to happen like 2 months ago. And that's when fund managers and hedge fund managers are like, you know what, this might be real. Let's just drop 1%. And 1% for them is like billions of dollars of their portfolio. So then, you see like a massive spike, right? Like if like 50 billion drop in one day, or 10 billion, it just rockets up.
Yeah. And I think the point you made about that, it's intrinsic. So there's no external factors besides the people who have the money invested in Bitcoin that are going to affect that price, the value of it going up and down. So I get why, especially like with last year, with everything that's happened and Corona and the world and everything, that is kind of like a little, it's kind of like a little island where like all the money's here and we get to decide how the value like kind of goes up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's like, I think 21 million Bitcoins that can never be mined. And we've already reached like 40% or 50%, something like that.
And on that point, so I know from my understanding is, because there's a finite amount, but every one you produce makes it harder to make another one. There's like a formula that makes it harder, and you need a lot of computing power to actually mine Bitcoins to have like even enough to like be worth something.
Exactly. So I want to like explain that, because it's really cool. Like what Bitcoin, like the creator or creators or whoever made Bitcoin, right? We don't even know, by the way. Like people say Satoshi, dude, we have no clue. That's the truth. Okay. But whoever created Bitcoin or whatever group made it, they really thought like 100 years ahead. It's the most advanced form of like economical creation we've ever had, because you're right. Like every time you mine a Bitcoin, the code becomes more difficult, and then it becomes more difficult and more, which kind of makes sense. Like if you were like, we used to bank money with gold, right? And if you mined gold, eventually it would get harder. You'd have to go deeper into the mine. So you'd have to employ way more people and use a lot more right? So it's like a natural progression, just using algorithms instead of real stuff. And the only way, like, so there's a fear of like blockchain can't be hackable, right? And it's true. Like the average person, you like if a hacker was to sit down and try to hack a block, he would have to produce like 1 million codes in a second. Okay, and he can't do that. That's why it's not hackable. But if we had quantum computing, which is like can generate like millions of codes, that's when blockchain can be hacked. But quantum computing is like so far away, right? Like we're not even close to creating that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
so that's why like Bitcoin is insane, because there's all these things that have been put in place that naturally just get harder, and then it gets harder to mine.
so I'm curious because this is something I didn't understand. So, like you said, Bitcoin and blockchain can't exist without the other, and Bitcoin is the result of blockchain technology. Now,
Yeah, yeah,
so how did what I don't understand is, then how are all these new cryptocurrencies popping up, like Ethereum? I know there's a lot more now. So
right.
are they just create like you're creating like value and like money out of almost nothing, kind of like how Bitcoin started. So how are they
Yeah,
doing it?
good. So that's a really good question. So you know how a company, when it goes public, they do an IPO, right? And then
Yeah.
they have a stock. So that's one use of tokenization. Okay, so like you're a company, you go public. Instead of you having a stock, you just have a token. Okay, so that's one
Okay.
way. Another
Okay.
way is utility token. So like a token that you can actually use. Let's say like, I don't know, XY supermarket, and they have their own token. And now you can use their supermarkets around the world, and you can buy groceries with the XY token. So that's another idea. But then there's
Okay.
something else, like you can do an ICO. Khalid can do an ICO, and like, hey, be part of my career. This is the Khalid token. You can't do that with a stock. The New York
Yeah, that's
Stock
true.
Exchange won't allow you to like list Khalid, right? But like on a token, you can do it. You can use the blockchain. You can make it so that nobody interferes with these tokens, and people can invest in your career. Every time you grow, or your podcast grows, they get a
Sure.
return using the
Yeah.
token.
Okay, so you're basically, so in those like an examples you use, you're assigning like a medium for the token to be useful. Like instead of, like I said, an IPO, I'm going to use a token. So now instead of buying shares, you buy like tokens to buy
Exactly.
into the company. And with a supermarket, now you buy these tokens so you can use my products and services. So it's giving like,
Exactly.
it's kind of how we use money to buy like everything. It's just a token now, the new, I guess, way of money. No, if I'm not
Exactly.
mistaken.
Exactly.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I do want to mention this, like
Yeah.
a lot of these they're called altcoins. Okay, so there's
Okay.
Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then
Like a
other
million others.
coins.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a million other coins. Like a lot of these coins, the best thing that I think they'll be able to do is just be like shares, like just shares
Mm,
of companies.
yeah.
Because the problem with other coins is that everything that these coins can do, everything that these coins are supposed to do in terms of utility and stuff, you can do with Ethereum.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? Like
No.
Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to be all we ever need, really.
Okay. Doesn't so
Like in
that
terms of utility, in terms of
okay.
like buying stuff,
Using okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like the only reason we have all these different currencies like dollar and euro and yen is because every country wants to have their own thing. But with blockchain, you don't need that, right? Like the blockchain is on the, like let's say like on the internet, it's on the
Sure.
blockchain. But imagine it's on the internet. Why would you need to have a yen and a euro, right? You just use like the dollar, for example. So
Yeah. So that kind of becomes a new global currency, and I guess some countries don't want that because it's everyone's. It's not my own. I can't influence it in any way. I can't
right,
devalue or or overvalue the currency based on what I need
exactly,
for like my economy right now.
exactly. And
Okay.
now you're getting into another point, which is decentralization, which is the
Yeah.
whole point of the entire thing. Like
Yeah.
people forget that, but decentralization is the entire point. Like when you can't mess with the currency, that's when it's decentralized, and that's why it's hard for governments to implement crypto, right? Like the whole
Mm,
point of a government is to manage things, and
yeah.
if it's decentralized, like how can they really manage it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I read the article that you wrote a few days ago about that could Bitcoin replace the US dollar. And one thing that I found interesting was, first of all, you talked about how you referenced like how decentralization started like with the internet and the online era, and now this is the decentralization of finance for the future. But also
Right,
a point that you said, which I thought was interesting from a government's perspective, is not just having influence over it, but from a security perspective. And I thought, if I'm not mistaken, why blockchain is so popular is because of how secure it is. So why is
exactly.
that something that governments would be worried about if it's something that's so secure from that perspective?
because that's an amazing question. Like you hit the nail on the head with the whole security issue. Like the blockchain technology makes it more secure, but there's still like human intervention on on how people use it. So for example, you can store your bitcoins directly on the blockchain, but then if you forget your private key, it's lost forever. You can't get it back.
Yeah.
You can't call like the government and be like, hey man, I forgot my private key there. Give me like, listen, it's like 15 different lines of codes. We can't really help you. So your money's lost forever. Another problem is when you're moving the money. So you move it off the blockchain into your wallet or something, into like a physical USB. Again, if you lose that, you've lost your money. So the system that we have now is good because your money is controlled by the bank and they bear all the liability, right? Like if they lose your money, you're like, hey man, you need to give me my money back. But
Yeah.
you can't like say that to the blockchain. It's just gonna look at you and continue to compute codes and completely ignore you.
That's actually okay. So now I understand. That makes a lot of sense. And I didn't consider that before because I understood that the attraction to blockchain was security. But like you said, you see stories all the time, like people who had
Yeah,
a
100%.
blockchain, a bitcoins from like 2010, and like he forgot it. I was like, now it would be worth like $200 million. I would be so upset.
Yeah.
If that was me.
I had a friend who had like just before it was like $8,000 of Bitcoin. It's just like a tiny amount, right? But it became like 70,000 over the last $70,000 over the last few days. And I had to help him dig out like 15 exchanges and transfer it and get it back and do all this stuff. And we lost a lot of it. You know what I mean? So it's the human element really is the issue. But if we can perfect the human element, then it makes total sense to use blockchain.
Yeah. No, that makes.
But that's a bigger challenge. That is the challenge, the human stuff.
Yeah. How do you account for human error? Because I don't think you can ever get 100% on that. But
Yeah,
so
exactly.
with blockchain. So now, because I'm genuinely trying to. This is fantastic for me
Yeah,
because I'm
absolutely,
learning.
absolutely. Yeah,
So
me too, by the way. Yeah.
so I have Bitcoin now, right? I bought it
Okay,
at X and now it's worth that. So in a
okay.
stock market, you have to someone needs to want to buy your shares so you can sell them, so you make whatever that profit is. How does that work on the blockchain? Because I'm just selling the coins that I have. So how does it work? Like how can let's say I invested today, it went up
Okay.
$10,000 tomorrow, and now I want to get that 10 grand difference that I've made out. How does that work?
Yeah. So you just trade it on an exchange. There's cryptocurrency exchanges, and yeah, the
Okay.
same way you sell the stock directly
Okay.
on the market. Like I had $2,000 worth of Bitcoin. It now became 10,000. I go on the exchange and I enter the market and I sell it to Khalid, who wants to buy, $10,000 worth of
Worth.
Bitcoin, even at that price because he thinks it's going to be 30. But for me, I've already made profit. I don't want to risk losing that.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
typical trade.
Okay. Got
But
you. Okay.
the nice thing about the stock market is that like it stocks are tied to technically like stocks are meant to be tied to company growth. Like the better
Yeah.
Apple does, the better your stock does. It's a bit different with Bitcoin because it's like, all right, if people start to believe in Bitcoin and start to lose faith in currency, because if people buy Bitcoins, it means the system, like Bitcoin is sucking fiat money, which is like, dollar, euro and stuff. It's sucking it out of the system, right? If Bitcoin goes up, it means more fiat money is going into the system. So that's like when you buy and sell stocks, why I like that is because it's tied to company growth. Bitcoin is a bit harder to, you gotta be a bit tougher to
Yeah.
be like, okay, you know, our system is gonna fail, or not gonna fail, but it needs to be revolutionized. Bitcoin is the next best technology we have. That's why Bitcoin is gonna go up, and then you start to invest. So it's
Yeah.
a bit different than the
Mm.
stock market.
And I think that's a good point that you said, that is tied to companies and company growth. But I think Bitcoin is purely perception and the public
Yeah,
perception.
yeah,
But similarly, like with the stock market, if you think, 'cause I can't remember who I was talking to about this the other day. What I don't like about the stock market is, I think, and it kind of plays into Bitcoin too, is perception. Because let's say, for example, I own a company, and there's a rumor goes out that I'm the CEO and I'm going to be leaving the company. Whether that rumor is true or not, that's going to have an influence on this, like people, whoever has shares in the company, that's going to have an influence on their perception of, oh, maybe it's time to sell because this guy's leaving, even if I don't. So similarly with Bitcoin, news or like rumors or whatever it might be can also have a big influence on that. So the question becomes, what's better? You know what I mean? Because it's almost
exactly. This is like a huge debate. Warren Buffett, I don't say he hates crypto, but he's always been against crypto. Okay, but Warren Buffett is the most successful investor that we know of. All right, there may be investors who've made hundreds of billions that maybe like they're secretive and they don't talk about it. But the one that we know for a fact is Warren Buffett, and his method was to buy undervalued companies that he understood through as many facts as he can get that they're going to perform well. That was his thinking. I like that because he technically he's buying faith in human performance. You get what I'm saying? Like he sees a company, he sees the concept, he sees the people behind it. He's like, yeah, it's undervalued. I'm going to get this. And that made him the richest investor in the world, right? It's a bit different with Bitcoin. It's a bit more difficult because it's harder to analyze like the entire ecosystem and governments and stuff. It's very difficult, but this is the main difference, I think, anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. That's a good point. That, for example, using the example of Warren Buffett, that he could really study it and analyze it, and there's like history and data to like prove that. But with Bitcoin, yes, you might have some of that data, but it's not as, what's the word?
Yeah,
not as solid, not as, not like, but you saw yesterday it was like this, and the next day it was like worth 10 times that much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It reflects, like the volatility reflects in the price.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. Because we don't know, the price changes every day. Like
exactly.
When like back in 2017, we were accepting a lot of our company revenue. Oh man, I hope this doesn't get me in trouble. But we were accepting a lot of our company revenue in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and we were one of the first events in the world to do that. In the Middle East, for sure, we were the first, but like in the world, we were one of the first, and we accepted like Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was 4,000, Ethereum was like 300. By the end of the first event, Bitcoin was 18K and Ethereum was 1,300. So we tripled our company revenue just by taking the risk of, because we had to accept that Bitcoin, and then we had to go and like find traders. And it's like company revenue. It's not like our, you know what I mean? It's not like personal money, but it was a big risk, but it worked out really well. But then the next event, I remember the first payment we got, whatever, like $30,000, and we received it in Bitcoin. And then the next day I woke up and that payment was like $12,000.
Oh
like Bitcoin had just like crashed. So then I made a decision, you know what? Like I'm not doing this with company revenue. If I accept it in Bitcoin, I'm going to use it as like a tool that I can just accept it in Bitcoin, and then we liquidate it immediately.
Yeah.
But yeah, that never happens with normal currency,
Yeah, of course.
You wake up the next day and like 50% of it's gone. But
yeah, but I think that's that's so funny how you've in your, like, in just 2 events you experienced the highs of it and the lows of it.
Literally, yeah. In 4 months I experienced like the beginning, the top, and the end. It's very, very.
Maybe something you could do is, I was just thinking out loud, like to have some sort of a balance. It'd be like, I'll accept, like, let's say this is my revenue, it's 100%. 80% of it I'm gonna take as currency. Then the last 20 I'll take as that, if you can risk it, if you have the ability to take that risk, if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you never know.
That's actually the formula that most, like, I don't want to say most, but some investors have talked about this. Like Mark Cuban talks about this. He says, take 10% of whatever you make, even every month or every sale, whatever you want, and then you can invest that in Bitcoin, or put a little bit in stocks and a little bit. So that's what I do now. Like with my personal finance
portfolio,
personal, I take 10% and I just throw it in Bitcoin and I just like forget about it. Like, I look at it as like a 10-year thing. Actually, every time I analyze the pattern of Bitcoin, it's like 6 months of volatility, a few months of really being down, and then a few months of booming. And then it just repeats over and over and over. So if you wait 10 years, you're definitely going to make an insane return. Even if you like catch it, 10 years later, you sell it down, you're still making huge returns.
More than what, because I guess as time goes on, the popularity of all these things is going to just, crypto is just going to increase more and more.
Absolutely. Like unless Bitcoin fails, then you're screwed. Okay.
Yeah.
But if it becomes like a thing that's meant to stay, then it's because there's only 21 million, right? So it's going to keep getting more, expensive to buy as it goes on. The value is going to have to increase unless one day the government's like, you know what, we're going to find the blockchain and burn it down, which they can't do. So
that's actually
turn off the internet. It doesn't work. You can't turn off the internet.
No, 100. That'd be a disaster, to be honest.
Yeah, but you can't do it. Like you'd have to go through all of the oceans of the world and cut like cables and stuff. And there's more ocean than land. You know what I mean? Like So it's impossible to turn off.
No, for sure. I was thinking. So is blockchain technology what else in like the financial world can that be like applied to? Like, are there fintech companies now that are like using blockchain, and what do they use it for? Is it security? Is it? Because I'm not familiar.
Sure. So we actually have a company that came to our event that is in Italy, and they're doing they're revolutionizing the bond system. So the guy who created the company was a lawyer who was working in the financial sector. He was dealing with bonds, and he's like, all the government bonds in Italy are like done on paper and stuff. Like they're still done, like they're not fully done on paper, obviously. But like a huge part of the entire system, even if it's online or whatever, done through the bank, there's still a lot of it on paper. And he his idea was that he'll put those government bonds on the blockchain. So like, how bonds are like 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. Imagine you can just store it on the blockchain for 10 years. You don't have to deal with paper or a bank, trading it for you or selling it, or you just put it on the blockchain and you forget about it. And 10 years later, one of the blocks unlocks, and you just take it. So it's being used as a tool to revolutionize the stuff that already exists.
Okay.
Like bonds, trading, IPOs, replacing stocks.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So anything you could do on the internet, you could do on the blockchain.
Okay, interesting. So I'm just so I have a full understanding. So listening to how you've been speaking about it. So the blockchain is kind of like the internet. It's this thing that everyone can use in whatever way they want. It's not that each company or whatever can create their own version of like a blockchain. It's just like the internet. Everything's there, and so when you say put it on the blockchain, everyone's putting it on the same system or the same concept, right? Or
no, because you can actually create your own blockchain as well.
Oh, okay.
So you can create your own blockchain, but most like a blockchain within the blockchain. Does that make sense? Like a mini internet on the internet.
Yeah, like a little, like you have your own like servers within the big thing.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So the most used blockchain network is the Ethereum network.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Interesting, man. This is so interesting. This is like something.
There's a lot to uncover, and by the way, so I am by no means a blockchain expert. Okay, I just deal with like thousands of companies who have done so many different things with blockchain, and because it's my job to bring them on board, I get to listen to like all those experts and what they say and how they're using their blockchain and stuff. So that's how I learned. But even blockchain experts still don't really know, because like there's so much stuff going on. Yeah. So it's very interesting. There's so much to learn, for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. But like you said, even if you're not an expert, the fact that you're dealing with you learn through speaking to all these people who are actually using this company. So that's how you get your understanding.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And like you don't really need we don't really know how the internet works fully, right? We just know that like we open a browser and somehow that browser, can take me to Google and I
Yeah.
can use my emails. That's all you really need to know. You don't need to be like a mathematician or a coder to understand. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. As long as I can get to, like YouTube and some games, I'm pretty happy. So yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
I wanted to come back to the event. So
Yeah.
you got into blockchain into Bitcoin in 2017. So where did the idea? Why did you think an event is the way that you wanted to go about it? And how did you start? Like, walk us through that process from like, okay, I want to get into
Yeah, sure.
Bitcoin. This is how, but I want to understand what was the thought process? Why an event? Like, walk us through that journey.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna actually tell you about the journey, okay? And
Sure.
this is like hardcore entrepreneurship, and like maybe not the best way to be an entrepreneur, but it's interesting how it works. So I used to work at PwC, right? And then I
Yeah.
moved to a bank. I was working at this bank, and they were making me work double shifts, and they were not paying me for the second shift. And like I had to be at the bank, so I had to like lock the doors. I couldn't just bounce and be like, "Yo, you're not paying me for the second shift. I'm out." Because then they'll pin me as you didn't lock the vault, and we lost money. So that was very horrible experience working in the bank double shift and stuff. But during that time, I was going through all this, like reading all this positive self-affirmation stuff, and like trying to really like increase my income. And then I had a friend who a girl told him, "Hey man, what is Bitcoin?" And he was like, "Yo, what are you talking about?" And then he just started to research it, and he was an entrepreneur. He started to research it, and then one day he called me up and he's like, "Hey man, I have an insane idea, and if you trust me, I need you to join." And I just felt it, and then I quit the bank on the spot. I didn't even
Oh
know
wow.
what he was. I swear to God, I didn't even know what he was talking about. I just quit the bank because I also hated the bank. And then we sat down together, and again we analyzed. Um, we started to get into blockchain, and we understood like, wow, this is going to be at least a big part of the future. And if we wanted to make a Bitcoin cryptocurrency exchange, that was going to cost like $1 million to set up. So that was out of the question. We kept looking at different stuff, and then we realized, you know, if we did an event, all we really need is a website, right? And then we can just start to, we can get the venue, and we can do all this stuff, but we can kind of build along the way. So that's what I did. I got a web developer. I had like, literally like 5,000 dirhams, which is like $1,500. Got a web developer, sold my bed. I had like a little studio I used to live in. I'm not even kidding, man. I sold my bed, and yeah, I got a table so I can hire part-time employees, and I just sleep on the couch, and like I would work. And within like 2 weeks, I made a sale of $15,000, and I took that to like $500,000 over the next 3 months. So it also helped me understand that there's no right way to be an entrepreneur, and there's no right way to make money. There's no limits on how fast. You know what I mean? It broke a lot of like crap for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, so that's how I personally went through that journey. But the reason we chose the event again is just the least capital intensive thing, and it's more about like, can you deliver? So that
Yeah.
entire time it was a huge risk, right? Because
Of
I'm
course.
taking clients' money, and we had a legal company, so we did everything legally. But we're taking clients' money, but there's still the product, the service is the end result, right?
Yeah.
Like the service of what they're paying for is the event. So it was just one of those things, like you have the balls to to do it, and then to make sure you deliver, and then we
Yeah.
delivered. We had an amazing event. We had two events that year, 2017, 2018, and 2017 was the largest event in the history of blockchain events in the Middle East.
Wow.
And yeah, 2018 was a decent one as well.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so yeah, this broke everything I knew about money and work and career. Just
Yeah.
it taught me
So,
that there are no rules. There's just like guidelines for how you can do things, but there's no rules.
yeah. And I think that's a good point, especially now, like nowadays, there's 10 million and one ways to make money, to be successful. And a friend of mine, I remember we were driving along and he's like, Khalid, literally, you can go on YouTube now, today, and you could learn anything in the world. And I'm like, and I was aware of that, but when he said it, I'm like, oh my God, that's so true. Like no matter what,
100%.
Anything. So you have access to all the tools now. It's just kind of like, obviously time is a factor, and picking the right one that you think matches you. So coming back to the event, so first year, the first one, 2017. Now, as an event for you guys, from your perspective, what did you have to like you said, you're getting clients money and you needed to deliver the product or service. So what in your mind was, what did you have to deliver at that event? What did you have to do to make it successful? Because you got the people now, it's like, how do we make this a good event?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So the event is a marketing tool. In the list of marketing things, there's paid advertising, there's online, social media, and then there's events. It's a form of marketing, right? So that by itself is a product, having an event where people can network and stuff. But then delivering so we try to do it in a way where we're a blockchain investment event. So when these blockchain companies come to us, they're paying to meet as many investors as possible. So we would try to bring investors to the event, and we would partner up with different kind of. So in Dubai, when people go to these events all over the world for investment, anything, not just blockchain, they look for VCs, venture capitals, family offices, high net worth individuals. The good thing about Dubai and the Middle East, we have a lot of very high net worth individuals. We have a lot of royals and family offices. We don't have many VCs. We do have some. So that's what made Dubai different for these companies. They would get to meet these royals and government and high net worth individuals. So that's what we would deliver at the event. And then of course, we made sure that they got a good speaking spot, that they had a nice fancy booth, and all the typical event stuff. But the idea was they come and they meet these investors to close deals. And we've had one customer who did $500,000 worth of business in a day, and he paid $16,000 to be there. But of course, we had a lot of other customers who just came to just be there, and they didn't get any deals. But that's the tricky thing with events, like the customer dissatisfaction can be high because people think I'll come to the event and I'll just close millions of deals. But it's a form of lead generation tool. It's a networking tool.
For sure.
So, So that's, I hope that answered the question, because I just tangent out.
No, it does. And actually perfectly segues to my next question. So I also read your article about the 1% of companies make 100% of the money at conferences. And I was like, 100%. Okay, that's interesting. And then I found out that 21% of marketing budgets are spent on events. That blew my mind. That's a lot of money. That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. Like when a company, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please go.
Like when a company sets out to do a marketing budget, they're like 20% goes into Google ads and Facebook ads, 20% goes into PR. PR, by the way, is completely underrated. Okay, the ability to if you can get a backlink on Forbes, don't come to my event. Okay, do that. If you can get a backlink on Forbes for like $4,000, that's better than anything you could do. PR is insane. SEO related PR. It's crazy. And then some on SEO, and then some on events. So companies spend all this money to go to events, but what I really like about being a human being is that even though we're humans with emotions and stuff, we've been able to make data, and the data never lies. Like the numbers never lie. Like 1% of the world owns all the wealth. It's the same thing for the events. Like 1% of those companies perform. Same thing in sales. Like in sales companies, 1% of the salespeople make all the revenue, and the other salespeople are just employees that just get by. They're just like buffers. Just there. So which leads me back to blockchain. That's why I really like blockchain, because the smartest humans created algorithms that we can just trust. The same thing like the data. So that's what I found out. Like 1% of the companies pretty much make all the money.
And what was interesting as well is, because I looked, so you said there's 3 things to be successful at the conference. There's the skin in the game, there's the follow-up, and there's attitude. Now, skin in the game part I understood, because you said your
Yeah,
sponsors who have invested like more money to have like the booths and so on have more reason, like we've invested a certain amount, so we have more reason to like make the most of every opportunity and, you know, create meetings and all that kind of stuff. But the question I have is, because you said obviously you have attendees as well who are not sponsors of the event and they don't do as well. Now I'm curious, in your opinion, can you still be successful at the events if you don't have the skin in the game, but you're a beast at like the follow-up and attitude?
yes, 100%, 100%. So like, again, one of the things that makes what I've noticed, okay, in my personal life, the
Yeah.
entrepreneurs that are very successful, at least in Dubai, the ones that I know and I can see, are always the ones that are so careful when we go out. Like the dudes who have the most money are always the guys who are like, hey, Mena, this place is going to cost us 500 dirhams for dinner. Why are we doing this? Like, let's go to this place. It's 100. You know what I mean? And I'm
Mm,
like, and I'm thinking to myself, dude, you drive a brand new G-Wagon,
mm,
you live in a penthouse, like, but that's the attitude. So unfortunately, though, not a lot of people can do that. Not a lot of people can utilize free things, something that's for free, and turn it into a profit,
mm.
because most people don't have that mindset. Otherwise, everyone would be a millionaire. It's really not that hard to make money. So yes, some people have the ability to try to get things for free and make the most out of it, but for most people, it works better when they feel pressured. And that form of pressure is when you actually pay for something, right? Like when you pay for something, you're like, yo, man, I got to make use of this because I
Yeah,
just spent all this money on it. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
unless you can do that other thing, which is eventually what everybody should do, you should try to be disciplined enough to make use of everything and always try to get stuff for free as much as you can.
yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
but skin in the game is like pressure. You need
Yeah,
that pressure sometimes.
for sure. And it kind of holds you, I think it's a very good point because it holds you like accountable. It's almost like if I've paid, let's say a couple thousand for like a gym membership, I can skip it once, maybe twice, but
Yeah,
after a while, I'm gonna be like, I feel like an asshole now because I've paid all this money and like I'm not using it. So it's that pressure is
exactly.
gonna get me to go and get things done.
Yeah, yeah. And that can be seen as a tool. Like, you know what?
Yeah,
If I think I'm going to be lazy on something, let me just pay for it to make sure it's like a form of
yeah.
pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And also what was interesting in when it came to the follow-up. So because my background is in sales. So when I saw follow-up,
Nice, nice.
I'm like, of course, because in sales, if there's no follow-up, there's no sales. This is what I learned in all my experience. Like and not just
100%.
like one follow-up, like you have to follow up a million
Yeah,
times. And then obviously you get to a point if they don't, خلاص, okay, it's fine, no worries. But usually it's the follow-ups that get you the thing. And you said that the successful ones were interacting with the clients that they met on an average 8 touch points, which is actually what
yeah,
usually takes, they say, to make a sale anyway,
exactly.
right?
100%. Six
Yeah,
to eight meetings to close the average sale. That's the
exactly.
statistic.
Yeah. And I love what
Yeah,
you said that most companies make sales, but the best companies make relationships because that is what
yeah.
it's about. Like you can have one good day. I can come to the event, I could make, let's say, I don't know, 100 grand, whatever. Okay, that's a good day. But did I develop those relationships after? If I have long term, the value of that is going to be much more than just that one day, which I think was a very good way to put it.
Yeah, 100%. So I learned this really late in business, but a successful business is built on the foundation of repeat customers. Because if you don't have income that continues to come in monthly, you're fighting for new business all the time, which is
Yeah,
very difficult to do. It's very difficult to get new
yeah,
customers, right? Otherwise, everybody can start a business and stuff. So like getting new customers is difficult, but if you build relationships, you have like income that keeps coming in because you have a relationship with the person.
yeah.
So that's super important.
For
Absolutely.
sure, for sure. Because obviously you need something to keep things going, keep things moving, cash flow, like all that kind of stuff. I'm
Yeah.
curious now. So how many events have you done so far? 4?
We've done 4 and one
4.
virtual one in Corona.
Okay,
Yeah. So yeah, 5.
perfect. Because that's where I was going next. So last year, like this 2020, I'm sure your event had to be moved unless you guys did it
Yeah.
before lockdown. It was
No.
virtual.
We
It
we
was.
we did. Yeah. In
Okay.
2020, like start of 2020, we were planning a physical event in March. Then we had to do it virtual. Yeah.
Okay. So how did that affect you guys? Because a virtual event, like when you bring like all these companies together, like, and they're walking around and they're meeting
Yeah.
people and they're talking,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
everyone's just in like a Zoom, how
Yeah.
was that experience? Was it challenging? Was it
So
was it successful? What would you say now looking back?
yeah, it was challenging because like there's if you start an event company today based off the information that we have over the last 20 years, whatever company you start, you have these guidelines of practices that you can use, and then you can create your own practices, but at least you have some sort of guideline. But with virtual events, like people have been running virtual events, but it's so not unpopular, but it's not common that I had to create my own kind of guidelines. Okay.
Yeah,
And that was difficult, but that was also amazing because it taught me that, wow, I was able to, if you really put your mind to it, there are really no rules to business. Like you can be creative and create a service or product and value it at your own price, and somebody will pay for it if they see the value.
sure.
So that was exciting. But of course, it was difficult because it's not the same revenue. It's like, you know,
Of
a
course.
lot less revenue, but at the same time, a lot less cost. So it's easier to scale, but it's a whole different ballgame. So I took it as a learning experience,
Yeah,
to taught us something different.
for sure.
But yeah, it can't replace it's more of a lead generation tool than the actual. So the actual event is a lead generation tool and a networking hub and a place for relationships. Virtual events were just like lead generation,
Yeah.
like a pre-relationship until we meet physically.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
exactly. What, in your experience, what have you found to be for the live events? What have you found to be the most successful thing? Is it putting in the work? I know both are important, but from your experience,
Sure,
is it
sure.
the pre-event, or post-event that is most important that companies should be focusing on? Because I look at it in two ways. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
pre-event, I can start reaching out to companies, developing conversations. So when I meet you, it's already warm and it's not cold, and we can, get in, and hopefully there's a better chance of,
Yeah.
something happening. And obviously the post-event is important because we need to follow up and develop that relationship. So in your experience, which is like, what's more important? Should focus on the
I
post or the
I
pre?
see what you mean.
Yeah.
If I had to choose one,
Yeah.
honestly, if I had to choose one, I would focus on the post. And I'd
Okay.
make sure that in the event, I'm networking as much as I can. And
Okay.
then after the event, I follow up as much as I can. But the ideal scenario is that you do both. You
For
warm
sure.
up the relationships, you come into the event, you make the pitch, whatever, and then you're just following up on invoices or meetings, or that would be the perfect sales cycle in terms of
Yeah.
coming to it.
And from the live events, so from event 1 to event 4, I'm sure each event, things change, you learn some things, but in those 4 events, what is, from 1 to 4, what is the biggest thing you learned in that experience, like across those 4
Yeah.
events, and building the events, and the experience and the service? Like, what was the biggest learning that you took away?
That's a really good question. So because I'm in blockchain, and I'm only in events because of blockchain. It's my way of being in the industry. Um, but yeah, it's very interesting because depending on Bitcoin's price, the performance of our events is very affected, right? Like if Bitcoin
Yeah,
is really high, all these people are at the event and it's like almost too full. And if Bitcoin is low, it's like a struggle to get people in. But then the people who come in are very technology based or very serious investors, so it like really changes all the time. So that was one learning experience, is that in other industries, you don't see this, you don't notice as much how the external factors affect your business. But in blockchain, you get it. You're like, wow, man, this is a big difference. So that was one thing. I learned how
okay,
important it is to assess the general environment or the general economy. And then another thing is, I learned that sometimes quantity is better than quality. So
quantity is better
that's
than quality.
yeah.
Okay,
So
interesting.
I
Well,
think
tell me about that.
that goes through, like, that goes against a lot of the traditional, like, advice for business, right? And people think that you got to perfect things and stuff. But also, when you perfect things, you spend a lot of time. And I could be making 5 shitty sales, but then be focusing on one sale that You know, like let's say like you're focusing so hard on this one $10,000 sale, but at that same time you could have made 6 or 7 small $3,000, $4,000 sales, and you know that's like double. Like if you add that revenue, it's like double. So sometimes quantity is more important than quality. Of course, quality is very important. You should never skimp on quality. But if it's distracting you from doing mass things and doing things in a big number, then you need to like bring it down a bit. Like it's better to not have perfect stuff, but your machine is going and you know, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
No.
difficult to grasp, but
Yeah.
like perfection is a form of insecurity. And
Yeah.
this is so important in business. As an artist, this is not important. You need to perfect things because you have that time. You're an artist, right? You can just sit there and design things. But in business, you cannot do that because by the time you're trying to perfect the product, your competition has already sold 10, even though it's like less, you know, less quality than yours. So
Yeah.
yeah, quantity is sometimes better than quality.
That's a very refreshing way of looking at it. But I see what you mean. And it does go against the traditional, you know, quality and so on. I like how I think the learning that you took to understand that the value of Bitcoin, that external factor, how much that's going to play into your event, helps you also, I think, in planning, in expectation of the values looking to generate from that event. Because like if it's low, you're going to project it this way. If it's high, you're going to be like, okay, this we can do something, we can do a lot here. But also, I think on the perfection part it's a very good point, because even me I remember when I started the podcast, I would try to, you don't understand, bro. I would spend like 2-3 hours editing, and it was just audio. There was no video at the time.
I can imagine.
And
yeah.
a friend of mine came who also has a podcast. This after like a while I was doing it, and he's like, "Man, if you can get it 80% there, it's 80% is good. 80% is
Amazing.
Good. And, you know,
Your friend
80% is
hit
great.
it like
Yeah, if you get 80%, no one's really gonna care. Only you, if you like in your own mind, but everyone else is gonna be very happy with 80 or 90%. That last 10, 20, take that, because that's time now that you've saved to do whatever else you want to do. So I totally understand. Like I totally get like where you're coming from with that.
Yeah. It's tough, you know, because like one of the things that I think we're worst at is really analyzing the level of our skill, right? Like a guy like Elon Musk does more quantity than me by millions, okay? And he can do that at a much higher quality. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like I have to understand, like, okay, if I spend this much time on quality, how much quantity, how much content can I actually produce? So then I gotta
balance.
fix that. Yeah, I have to balance that within myself, and then that naturally gets better. So now you can produce more content and better quality. It's tough, man. Being a human being is very tough.
Yeah, for sure, man. 100%. I always say because we're funny. We're the most, because I study a lot of like, so I'm a hypnotherapist as well. So I understand, and I do study a lot of like research on psychology and like how people work and stuff. So I always say with like people, we're all the same. We all work in the same way. Yet, so we're very predictable in that sense, but we're also the most unpredictable creatures in the world, because everything there's emotion that plays into it, and that's what makes everything unpredictable. So I totally agree with you. I wanted to come back to this just one question, because I know for your event, you guys you're constantly communicating with like C levels and CEOs and company owners and like high net worth individuals and so on. So by now I'm sure you're a lot more like comfortable with it. You have the track record, so when you speak, you know this, that.
You'd be surprised.
Really? So I'm curious when you started, how was that for you compared to like now? Like you've improved for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an amazing question actually, because the answer is something that I myself wouldn't even like think about. But when I always had like a natural ability for sales. I always feel comfortable talking to new people. But I didn't know that I was a consultant, Big Four, completely different than what my actual skill set was. So I never had an issue talking to people, and I started this company when I was like a lot younger, so I was less mature. But I never had a problem speaking to people. But are you asking if it gets easier, like doing sales and stuff?
I'm kind of asking, like, when you first started, like when I'm trying to think event one, you're getting all
Okay.
these guys and you're trying to like speak to people, and you don't have the track record that gives you that more of that
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
confidence
yeah,
to, to sell the product. And now you do. Of course, I'm sure there's with sales is always going to be that. It
yeah,
never
yeah,
go, we're humans, it never goes away, but you get better. You get better over time.
yeah. You get better, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You get better at lead qualification. You get better at a lot of the stuff around the actual sales. I think that's important. Like you should get better at everything that makes your sale take less time. I think that's more important.
Yeah.
But but the sale for me never changed. Like the way I speak to someone is the same. I just now know like, okay, this kind of person can probably pay. You know, this
Yeah.
kind of person probably can't.
Yeah.
This is a real investor. This is not. But yeah, when I first started, like, I don't know, man. I don't know how I did that, but like, I was talking as if I had already done 50 events and I was the
Mm.
most experienced guy, and like I knew everything, and just I don't know. Maybe it's you have to be a little bit ignorant. You know, you got to be a little bit ignorant and just be like,
Yeah.
you know what? I believe this is gonna happen.
Yeah.
This is the thing that I really like is that you can sway the truth or twist the truth or make it look better or market the truth as much as you want, but you have to deliver. You
Of
know,
course.
if you can
Yeah.
deliver, no one cares. No one
Yeah.
cares. But if you
Exactly.
can't deliver, that's when things don't look so good.
Exactly. And I think you said a very good point that like I love when you started that you were talking and saying it as if like, yeah, bro, I've done this like 100 times. I'm like sell it, yes, and it comes back
Yeah, yeah,
to sales in a way that because I had someone on the podcast recently and we were talking about the difference between true value and perceived value. If I know what the true value of this product is, but if I can market it like you said, or set or show create a perceived value for you that you're willing to pay for, then as long as the true value is good, it's not shit, of course, you're gonna be happy paying
yeah.
for that.
100%, 100%. Like this is the by the way, this is the dilemma that VCs face all the time. Is that like you might have the best product in the world or the best concept, okay? Unless your product is so good, like Tesla is such a good product that it sells itself. So this
Yeah,
is this is like now you're tier one. That's $1 billion startup. The product is so good or the service is so freaking good that it does the job by itself. Then there's tier two companies. Like you have a good product, but you need salespeople. And then there's, the tiers go down. The more the tiers go down, the more you need sales skills to actually like succeed. But yeah,
yeah,
sales skills are insanely important and marketing skills.
100%, man.
Yeah. What was your first podcast like? How did you feel? Were you like shy or?
My first that's a good question. I remember my first episode, man, it feels so long ago now. It was just with a friend, and the podcast is aimed to help people, but I wanted the inspiration came from like Joe Rogan. I loved how it was just, free flow, whatever. So I remember my first episode, the first two or three were like 2 hours and a half, 2 hours. And I'm like, that's fine. And I wasn't really a structure to it, but I realized that, listen, if I want to help someone, then I need to change this. I have to change this up. It needs to be less time. If it goes over, fine. If the conversation is great, I'm never going to put this up to a podcast. But
Yeah.
typically in the 45 to an hour and a half range is where you can get like mountains of like content. So first episode, it was just me and a friend. We're just talking about, relationships and the past and blah, blah, blah. And then as time has gone on, like now the prep I do, the research, even the questions, even how I
Yeah,
speak,
yeah,
it's night and day. It's honestly night
yeah.
and
It's a
day.
big difference. It's a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
difference.
yeah.
So hope it helps again is does it go into like all topics or is it mainly just like startup related?
Anything, man. Honestly, I've
Okay,
had,
okay, okay. Because the
I,
ones that I've watched have been mainly about like startups and
yeah,
business,
yeah,
things like that.
exactly. But and that's kind of my vision with it is I want to expand into as many different topics and stuff as possible because that just brings so many more like ways you can get into the podcast. Like for you, for example, which is interesting that although the ones you checked out were all business and stuff because that's what you like.
It's
You
like
know what I
SEO,
mean?
you know, LinkedIn
Yeah,
SEO.
yeah,
It gave me
exactly.
the ones that are related to me.
Exactly. There you go. So it gave you the business, and then there's, you know, for fitness, there's fashion, there's literally anything, doctors, therapy, whatever you want. Like, alhamdulillah, it's been an amazing experience, and I've had some incredible people on, and we are still in the early days, much more to come, but it's
Yeah,
okay.
for sure,
For sure, man. Mina, I just have two more questions for you, and these are questions I ask all my guests.
Okay.
Looking back now over the last a couple of years, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud that I've been able to like create my own independence in the system. Does that make sense? Like I was able to create business or create income using no guidelines that I've set before me. Now that's not the best thing. Okay, I'm not, again, like I never wanted to. It's not that I never wanted to be in business, but I landed in business because my job was shitty.
Yeah.
Like it forced me to, and I saw an opportunity and things aligned in a way. But I'm happy that I've been able to, you know, create the confidence and create the ability to create income without guidelines. I think that's important. That can give a person a lot of self-confidence. If anybody wants to be an entrepreneur, I think that's a good way to go about it. Maybe not try to think of money and wealth and be my own boss, but just try to think as a human being, can I like create income in this system without people having to tell me what to sell or what to write? I think that's maybe what I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
Sure.
So finding a way to be creative, basically. Pick the industry or the niche that you want and figure out a creative way to get into it. Like you said, you landed in it, but also that's kind of, I think that's how a lot of people fall into things sometimes, you know, bad job, blah, blah, blah. I've always wanted to do this. You talk to this guy, 1, 2, 3, and then, you know, next thing you know, you're like, you started, you're doing it. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
100%.
So I totally get that. And for my last question, Mina, this is a question I ask all the guests, is what is the message you'd like everyone to take home with them today?
Okay, that's all right. Let's try to sum this up without sounding cheesy or sounding misleading. Okay, here's a nice message. Okay, try to be as realistic as you can be while maintaining as much optimism as you can to do things that don't make sense for you, but things that you think are going to be rewarding in your life, things that you're not going to regret once you die, you know?
Yeah.
And that like formula, 80% realism and, you know, 40% optimism, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And 60% actually doing stuff will probably lead you to a life that one day you won't regret. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. So dream, reality, action, and what was the last one you said? Dream, reality, action, and optimism.
And optimism, yeah.
Optimism. Okay.
Which leads to as minimal regret as possible, which means a more fulfilling life, or as fulfilling as, you know, as you can make your life.
Yeah, I think that's a great message, man. And I think the 4 things you mentioned are important because we all it's like dreaming is great and everyone should dream. I have dreams, you have dreams, we have things we want to achieve, but also there has to be an element of realism or reality into it to be like, how can you get that dream? But also please.
And I'm sorry that I'm cutting you off, but I think it's important. Like, that doesn't mean that. So let's say I want to go to Mars. Okay, let's say I'm Elon Musk right now and I want to go to Mars. If I really want to go to Mars, that's a valid dream. Okay, dreams, nobody can judge your dreams. But then I got to make a plan. Like, okay, I probably need to raise, you know, $500 million to start building rockets. And then maybe, so, you know, that should lead you to step 1, which is, okay, I'm good at PowerPoint presentations. Let me now go to consulting firms and I'm going to outsource my skills, which is I'm going to build them presentations, and that's going to be my business. And if I make $100 per presentation, whatever, that's now my business. And then that should lead you to your ultimate dream. But like, the issue is that people have these big dreams and they think, I got to do this dream now. And if it doesn't work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's no actual path to get to your wildest dreams.
Yeah. So it's having the dream and then creating the best realistic first step, and then just figuring out
Yes,
as you go along.
amazing. Yeah, thank you.
Right?
You like decoded the words for me. For some reason, I couldn't put it that way, which sounds now much simpler.
Yeah. No, you set it up. I just helped bring it home.
Yeah, thanks.
Mena,
Great.
man, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I learned so much from you
Yeah,
about
really enjoyed this.
entrepreneurship and Bitcoin and fintech. So at least now, if I'm talking to someone, I'll be like, actually, I know some things right now. So
Yeah,
just
exactly.
so
You're like now you're pretty much, so 80% of the people who call themselves Bitcoin experts, you're now a Bitcoin expert. You're on
yeah.
par with those dudes.
That's good. That's good. I look forward to having those
Yeah,
conversations. But yeah, man, thank you
yeah.
so much for
So
your time. I really appreciate it.
yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This was super fun. Super fun. Yeah,
Awesome, man. Glad you enjoyed it. Guys, to everyone listening, thank you so much. And as always, hope it helps. Peace.
yeah. Peace.